Hey, it's your girl Nay from Around the Way, and thank you for joining Spiritually Soft Podcast. I welcome you to the most safest space. This episode, we're getting into parent wounds. I first want to get into the writing progress. Okay. After restructuring, completely changing the cover, I like this one. I've definitely been extremely too picky. Hubby was like, okay, you need to stop being too picky. And maybe that's the Virgo in me. Like I'm over here like, well, actually, I don't even want to even say a zodiac sign or even like associated with that. I feel like any true artist, like your craft is so personal to you. Like these pieces are so personal, and ironically so, a lot of these pieces I actually wrote about like 3 years ago. Like this has been in the vault, so I'm already critiquing it so much because I've grown as a writer since then. But it's definitely work I felt like I needed to get out. It's very transformative. And also, it's leading up to stepping into womanhood. Like, without this, you wouldn't be able to understand Love Part 2, obviously. And you definitely wouldn't be understand, stepping into womanhood because it's like, I mean, hello, we had to crawl before we walk. But you are going to get more content with that. I know I've been saying that, but we are approaching almost a month out, and I'm going to be firing a lot of, behind the scene work, a lot of content in regards to, the process and how it took and where I'm at, and, really just the final stages of getting everything together for the launch, which is March 21st. Yeah, let's get right into parent wounds. This one I was definitely very reluctant, which I kind of already spoke about in a post, mainly because it was just like it's such a sensitive topic, and but I felt like it's a conversation that needs to be had. Like how your child, like how like you were treated in your childhood essentially wires you into how you respond, how you are even in your adult life, and especially if it goes like unhealed, like not really unhealed, but especially if it goes, not delved into deeper, healing those parts of you that, that you need to work on. It becomes that like cycle of like that rinse, wash, repeat over and over again. Um, and what that even looks like, even in like relationships and friendships, especially if you have like mother issues. And this is something that, you know, um, especially me and a lot of my close friends, we have talked about so much, where it's like it creates like a generational pattern. Like it's like when like you didn't have the greatest relationship with your mom, and then it's like now you have a daughter, and like that essentially is like the same exact way because you didn't even know how to really, you know, be motherly because you weren't given that. Now, I want to have a disclaimer with that. What you lack in your childhood could make you one or two parents. You can either do the exact same thing that your parent did, or you can be someone that's like, oh, absolutely not. Like, I'm going to overly make sure that my child feels loved, make sure I'm not abandoning them, making sure that they have a safe space to be able to talk to me and communicate, like, talk to me and express their feelings and so forth. Like, you would be one or two of like those things. And it's like, it also kind of makes you reluctant on fully embracing friendships like the way that you should, because it's like that first kind of like, you know, jealousy, so to speak, came from your mom or came from your father. Now, men are obviously wired a completely different way than women. And like I've stated so many times, like I'm not going to touch too much on as to how a man thinks, operates, and all of that because I'm not a man. But I know for a women aspect, like it makes us a lot, like, it makes us very reluctant to even have girlfriends because we weren't friends with our moms. Now, we already know how parents roll. I'm not one of your little friends. No, you're not. But that relationship piece, as to feeling like my mom is my best friend, I have noticed that when women have amazing relationships with their mothers, they end up being like the best friends to have. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're able to connect with the woman on a whole different level versus someone that already has such like that built up animosity or built up like, resistance. It's almost like that's that same kind of pattern that even goes within like your friendships and moving forward. And, you know, that's obviously unhealthy. And then obviously we touch on even just the father issues, like, you know, that could be bringing up like, even more like breaking of the trust. And this goes in tangent even with your romantic relationships as well, because it's like, this gets surface up in your relationships with other people, like I had stated before. So especially if you're having like abandonment issues, it like creates that like unhealthy like clinginess and so forth. um and like makes you sometimes like overly possessive over your partner because of that fear of like, them leaving, and not understanding that, your partner is their own person. They have their own life outside of you. And I'm not saying outside of you like you have like a whole other life, but they have their own circle of friends. Like, they have their own interests, they have their own, things that they desire and so forth, and you have to respect that. And a lot of times when like you haven't received that respect when you were in as a child, and you haven't properly worked on that, it comes up over and over and over again until you have decided, hey, I don't want to participate in this cycle. I want to do better. And that kind of even brings us to that very first episode that I was talking about, the choice of wanting to do better. Seeing like, hey, like, why am I not really getting along with a lot of females? Let's dive deeper into that. A lot of times we don't want to take that extra step to dive deeper, to, really see what's, underneath the surface. And also dealing with those emotions can be very hard for a lot of people. A lot of that is a lot of those emotions come with extreme pain that most of us don't necessarily even want to compact even in that moment. But yeah, like it's definitely something that is just one of those, it's like one of those topics that are very, like I said, touchy, but at the same time, I feel like it's very important for you to not only have that conversation with your partner or have those type of conversations, with your friends or family, but even just having that conversation with yourself. Like, it starts with you. How does that, how has this impacted me negatively and positively, and how can I, strengthen myself in these areas of opportunity? And even just like, the forgiving or cutting off. Now, I'm 50-50 on that. I'm on the fence because I feel like that's a case by case thing. Do I feel like you should completely cut off your parent? No. And you see the hesitation with my no, because it depends on the situation. Because you have some people that, I'm not about to be politically correct, they had no business being a parent. Okay. And they did more damage than good. And sometimes it's better for you to remove yourself from them, love them from a distance, and keep them at bayside, because what they bring into your life no longer serves purpose in your life. It constantly drags you down, or it becomes a point where it's like every time that, you know you are around, it's creating chaos for me, even in my adult life, even with my friendships or my relationships. And those are something that I hold so dearly to me that I have to back away for this purpose. Like, it's a case by case thing. One thing that I always, especially with becoming a parent, I have understood my mom's shoes way more than I ever could imagine. You know, um, a lot of the things within, my childhood, you didn't understand because it was just like, you're a child, like you can't even comprehend the sacrifices, even if they were even told to you. And because you just didn't have the knowledge. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And when you get older and you're faced with kind of those same things, you're like, you know what? Maybe that's why my mom did that. Or, they're human as well. What things did they endure in their childhood? And especially, you know, within the Black and brown community, there is a lot of, I'm 30. So the generations before that, a lot of those conversations weren't even had. Okay? As a child, you were known to stay in your place. You were supposed to be seen and not heard. And very much what happened in this household stayed in this household. And sometimes we not even talking about what happened in this household because it ain't none of your business. Okay? So that is, transferred over to generations where they don't even know how to heal themselves because they don't even know what that conversation looks like. Like, a lot of times you have to, especially what I've realized with this healing journey is forgiving. Forgiving isn't even just for them. Forgiving is mainly for me, because why am I holding on to that hurt? What purpose does that serve me? Especially if I know that I didn't do anything and you decided to inflict your behaviors and inflict pain, or however the scenario goes, to whichever happened and took place. Like, that's something you have to live with. Like, why do I need to hold that? Why do I need to feel like feel the burden of that? You shouldn't. And for our finisher activity, it's like, how can you move forward? I'm big on writing letters, like writing a letter to your parent, letting all those emotions out, reading that letter out loud in the mirror. And when you look in the mirror, say this affirmation: I release myself from my childhood parent wounds. Those wounds no longer define me. As I move forward, I walk with grace, love, and most importantly, spiritually soft. Those affirmations within the mirror are very powerful. It's you'd be surprised with putting those emotions on paper and calling a name to it and addressing it in the moment, and really after that, releasing all of that, how lighter you feel, how much softer you feel. And that's something that's very transformative. So I definitely urge you guys to do that. And you don't necessarily have to give the letter to your parent. You can burn it, shred it, discard it of any way you choose to. But, letting all of that out is very, very important for your healing. So for the quote of the episode, there's no handbook when it comes to parenting. It changes with every child and in every time period in which the child was born in. All we can do is hope for the best and be the best. Thank you again for joining us at Spiritually Soft. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Like, comment, and subscribe. Love ya.